Welcome back, class 10, your civics class. The last little bit is left. It will not be a very long and detailed class because a little bit is left from the Union Executive. We have today basically two major things to discuss. One is ministerial responsibility. Now, what is ministerial responsibility? Responsibility of the ministers. Ministerial responsibility is the essential feature of parliamentary form of government. As in Britain, so is in India. Also, the principle of ministerial responsibility has two dimensions. That means there are two different categories or different types of ministerial responsibility. One is known as the collective responsibility. The other one is known as individual responsibility. Now, under Article 75(3) of the Constitution, the Council of Ministers shall be collectively responsible to the House of the people. Now, in civics, what happens is while you are answering, it is better to stick to the language which is given in the book because it is basically, typical legal language. You can't deviate from that. You can't make up your own. You can make up your own, provided you can explain it properly. So, what does it mean? It means the Council of Ministers shall be collectively responsible to the House of the People. That means House of the People is Lok Sabha. So, the Council of Ministers should be collectively, unitedly responsible to the House of the People, to the Lok Sabha. The ministers are responsible to the Lok Sabha not as individual alone. They are not responsible as individual alone. They are in a different scenario, but not under the heading of collective responsibility, but collectively also. Members of the cabinet swim and sink together. They go up and go down together. When a decision has been taken by the cabinet, every minister has to stand by it without hesitation. Every minister has to listen to it without hesitation. The essence of collective responsibility is that a measure accepted by the cabinet is regarded as a joint responsibility of everyone, whether or not he was present at the meeting which reached the conclusion or whether he opposed it when it was discussed. What does it mean? Suppose a measure or an act or something, a work has been done by the Council of Ministers, the Cabinet Ministers. If that thing yields positive result, collectively the ministers or the Council of Ministers will rejoice. If the measure taken fails miserably, the Council of Ministers have to take the responsibility of it. All the Council of Ministers, even if a minister was absent during the day when that measure was taken, or he is singularly opposed to that measure and that measure failed, he cannot say, no, I opposed, I cannot be held responsible, or I was not present on that day when the measure was taken, you cannot hold me responsible. It's not like that. Whether he was present or she was present, or whether he or she opposed to that, whatever measure the Council of Ministers have taken, even if he opposed it, that person has to take the responsibility. If he can share the reward, he has to take the responsibility if something goes wrong. Okay, now, the essence, that means the main meaning of the collective responsibility is that a measure accepted by the cabinet is regarded as a joint responsibility of everyone, whether or not he was present at the meeting or reached to the conclusion or whether he opposed it when discussed. A no confidence motion expresses want of confidence in a government. It is generally moved by the leader of the opposition. On conclusion of the debate, the speaker puts the motion to vote. If the vote is passed, the ministry has to resign. We have discussed it in length. At length we have discussed. What is no confidence motion? We have discussed. What happens if a vote of no confidence is passed? What happens if the Prime Minister resigns? These things are all related to that. That means if the no confidence motion is generally passed by the opposition, obviously the ruling party cannot pass a no confidence motion on their own. If the opposition passes a no confidence motion, and if by any chance that is passed and that means it is put to vote, and if it is passed, if the motion is passed, the whole ministry, that means the ruling government, has to resign. Now after collective responsibility comes individual responsibility. Now what is individual responsibility? Though the ministers are collectively responsible to the Lok Sabha, they shall be individually responsible as head of state. Collective responsibility is there. On top of that, individual responsibility is also there. How? The ministers hold office during the pleasure of the president. It implies that the ministers, will be liable to be dismissed by the president for their undesirable activities. The president has elected them, not elected them, the president has given them their office on advice of the Prime Minister, appointed by the President on advice of the Prime Minister. If they don't perform in a proper way, they can be dismissed by the President also. However, in these matters, the President acts on the advice of the Prime Minister. Obviously, during appointment also the Prime Minister gives advice. During dismissal also the Prime Minister will give you advice. Usually, because of something that the Prime Minister has done, the Minister has done, the Prime Minister asks him to resign, which he readily does. Besides, every minister is obliged to answer questions pertaining to his department. That means if the minister does something wrong and if the Prime Minister asks him to resign, he obliges. That means he resigns. And moreover, each minister is responsible for his own ministry and he is responsible for answering questions if asked by by the Prime Minister. Now, basically, that is all regarding collective responsibility and individual responsibility. Now, just a little bit for your general knowledge. Methods by which the Parliament ensures ministerial responsibility. There is control over the Parliament. The Council of Ministers is responsible for Lok Sabha. There are several methods by which Parliament ensures ministerial responsibility, that the ministers don't go out of bounds. Number one, to put the ministers' questions which should be properly answered. No minister can afford to take question lightly because sometimes even a simple inquiry may lead to unexpected volume of criticism. The questions given by MP some measures control of the executive. That means the ministers are liable to answer any questions that he is asked or she is asked. He cannot avoid any questions because he is a public servant. Number two, moving an adjournment motion for discussing an important matter that should be of urgent consideration. Adjournment motion, moving an adjournment motion to discuss anything which is urgent, is also a way of controlling the ministerial, or ensuring rather, the ministerial responsibility. Moving cut motion when the financial matter is under consideration is also another important thing. Moving of censure motion is also another important thing. And moving a no confidence motion is also the ultimate, such a motion where the whole ministry has to resign. So basically that is all. So we have completed this chapter also. Next chapter will start with the judiciary, that is the legal system. We'll start off with the Supreme Court. So study this chapter well. Very important from an ICSE point of view. Thank you very much for today.